Hey everybody, this is Matt Ullman, and was thinking today about how I got started liking science, and I can nail it down to two things. Emma mentioned them here just because I wouldn't, if I didn't think of doing it, I wouldn't be making this video. And just kind of curious to see how else, or see if anybody else got into it in a similar way. First way was because when I was growing up, I lived next door to an archaeologist. And I was going to parochial school at the time, so I was really big. In fact, at that point, I was even thinking of becoming a pastor. And one of the things that drove me to it was because here was somebody living right next door to me that was that their whole career was digging into the past literally and seeing what they could find. So I think some part of me is at that time was still ideological enough to think, hey, maybe they could find, the Ark of the Covenant, which was the big thing for me at the time. I'd seen Raiders of the Lost Ark and had a very strange mix of religious archaeology and Nazi history fetish going on. I couldn't get enough of either one of them because I had never heard of the Nazis before. I was like 10 or 12 when I saw that movie. And so I knew they were the bad guys. But I just thought, okay, they're the bad guys in this film. I didn't think they existed until somebody said, yes, they do. Or yes, they did. I was like, oh, um, okay, then it's something else I gotta learn about. And every now and even to this day, I'm still slightly fascinated in them. Not for any, not that I'm going to follow the ideology. I'm not. I just find it fascinating. I find the movement that came out of it fascinating. That by hook or by crook, you could literally motivate an entire nation like that. That's interesting. So it's more of a social studies type thing any more than, oh yay, Hitler was right. No, Hitler wasn't right. I don't think Hitler knew what he was talking about half the time. But because of that, it really got me into questioning things. Up until that point, I wasn't too good at questioning them. And then he gave me something. He was having a garage sale one time. He used to be a tabletop gamer. And for $5, he sold me the first edition of the Deities and Demigods book from Dungeons and Dragons, which I assume because he was an archaeologist that everything in there was fact. It isn't, but obviously. But there are enough sprinkles in their description to give you a good idea on things, and a lot of the gods and goddesses from that were honest to God gods and goddesses in this world. So it sent me on another path. It's like, well, we've got our God, they've got these gods, and sounds like to this day some of them still have them. So this is interesting. And it kind of veered me off from being a pastor because then, and it wasn't because I'd found other religions, it was just because part of me realized, well, if there are all these choices out there, what makes me think this is the right one? So I'm going to need to go and study these. And ultimately it came down to, I believe there's something governing it. Is it God? I don't know. I don't know the name of it. I don't care to know the name of it. I know I exist. I know the world exists. That's all I need to know. Now, what got me into science? One of the things that got me into the science end of research and stuff was a TV show called Doctor Who, and it was the old one, a Tom Baker episode written by Douglas Adams called The Pirate Planet. The story is that there's a planet that has been hollowed out and now using massive engines literally surrounds other planets, mines them, and moves on. It's a gigantic mining machine. Neat idea. But that wasn't what got me interested in things. What got me interested was at one point the Doctor and the Captain, who's obviously the captain of this world ship, the Captain takes the Doctor through what he calls his trophy room. And I've been looking and looking and looking for this clip on video online, and it's just not there. I'm gonna have to find some way to make it myself, I guess. And along the sides of his trophy room, there are almost like, if you've gone to a museum, you've seen them. It's almost like a in-the-wall display with glass around the edge, so you can see it, but you can't touch it. And inside of them were rocks with names underneath them. Brendraginus 5 and Califrax were the two that they focused on in this story. So you saw them in the background a lot. And initially, and this is what I thought too, the Doctor asked him, are these trophies? Are you so sick that you've mined all these things, you've killed probably billions if not trillions of people when you've mined these things, and so, why keep them? And the Captain dropped a bombshell that even to this day, I just finished watching it a couple of hours ago, even to this day makes me want to find a way to prove it can be done. What he did was he literally compacted the entire remains of the world he had just mined. Keeping in mind the thing was still probably about the size of a moon when he did this, down to the size of a baseball, and had come up with a machine so perfectly tuned that he could walk right by it and the thing wouldn't even think of expanding or exploding or anything. The forces in that chamber kept everything in check in such a way that the planet stayed there. And just thinking of that, I mean, I know for a fact, if I mention that, everybody, well, that's science fiction, well, so were cell phones about 50 years ago. I know it's science fiction only because our science hasn't evolved to the point where we can even begin to try and make it a fact. And I don't know, I mean, the ship, the way to do that, I mean, that's hundreds, if not thousands of years beyond us. That we could take, imagine taking the moon, crunching it down to the size of a softball, not destroying any mass, not changing any of the features, just taking pure force and compacting it as it is to a size like this, and then suspending it and putting it on display. That is what the Captain did. And every time I watch that, it fascinates me. Because there had to have been a way. When Douglas Adams wrote that, there had to have been something in his mind that he thought of that put it in his head, you know what, hey, maybe this could work. I could use this as a plot point because somewhere out there in something that he read, there was something that would say, yes, you can control the forces of gravity and the forces of energy so finely that you can do something like this. That's me, that's what got me into science and, digging into things. So if you want, respond back, let me know how you got into it, if you got into it. It doesn't have to be science, doesn't have to be archaeology, it could be anything. What set you off on learning the thing that you love to learn about? You guys are up. Answer for me.